The words hit me like ice water in July heat. Charity cases eat last. Tyler's voice carried across the crowded backyard, clear as a bell, loud enough for everyone to hear. My hand froze halfway to the paper plates as a dozen conversations suddenly went quiet. I looked up to see my 12-year-old nephew grinning at me with that same smug expression his father, Marcus, always wore. Behind him, his younger siblings giggled into their hands like he'd just told the world's funniest joke. The smell of grilling burgers suddenly made my stomach turn. My name is Diana. I'm 31, and I'm a financial analyst. This is the story of how I made my family realize that charity cases sometimes own the whole damn charity. Jennifer, Tyler's mother, let out a quick laugh before covering her mouth with her hand, but not quickly enough to hide her amusement. Marcus just kept flipping burgers, that slight smile playing at his lips like his son had done something clever. Dad stood by the cooler, met my eyes for exactly 1 second, then found something fascinating about his beer label. The July heat pressed down on me as I stood there holding an empty plate, surrounded by my family at our annual Thompson barbecue. Every face I'd known since childhood now looked like they were watching a show, waiting to see what the family disappointment would do next. "Tyler," I said quietly, my voice steady despite the fire building in my chest. "Good to know where you learned your manners." I set the plate back on the stack and walked toward the side gate. The conversation slowly resumed behind me, punctuated by someone's laughter that cut through the air like broken glass. "Diana, don't be so dramatic," my sister Amanda called out. "He's just a kid." Just a kid. Just a kid who'd learned that some people matter and some don't. Just a kid whose parents taught him it was funny to humiliate family members in public. Just a kid who had no idea I owned 37% of his daddy's precious company. My apartment was 40 minutes away, but I drove in silence, the air conditioning doing nothing to cool the heat in my face. I'd stopped being angry at my family years ago. Anger required energy. I decided to invest elsewhere. But as I sat on my couch staring at my phone, something darker than anger settled in my stomach. My phone buzzed at 9:30 p.m. "Diana, the business needs capital injection. Can we discuss tomorrow?" "Dad." I stared at that message for a long time. Thompson and Associates, the consulting firm Dad had built from nothing over 30 years. Marcus ran operations. Amanda handled human resources. It was the family business, except they'd never once offered me a position. What they didn't know was that 3 years ago, when their Western expansion was hemorrhaging money, I'd quietly moved $800,000 through my investment firm into their company. Over the next 2 years, I'd added another $4.2 million. Paperwork listed my holdings under Sterling Capital Management. Clean, anonymous, untraceable, to the daughter they considered barely adequate. I owned 37% of Thompson and Associates. Dad owned 41%. Marcus had 15. Amanda had 7. And none of them had a clue. I typed back, "Never again." Then I opened my laptop and composed an email to my investment manager, Robert Chen at Sterling Capital. "Effective immediately, begin divestment proceedings for all Thompson and Associates holdings. I want complete separation within 30 days. I hit send and powered off my phone. Tomorrow, the real barbecue would begin. The next morning, I went to work like nothing had changed. My colleagues at Morrison Financial knew me as a dedicated analyst who managed her own impressive investment portfolio on the side. They had no idea that portfolio included a controlling interest in a mid-sized consulting firm run by people who thought I was a glorified accountant. I kept my phone off until lunch. When I turned it on, 7 missed calls from Dad, 4 from Marcus, 11 text messages. I deleted them without reading a single word and called Robert. "It started," he said without preamble. "Contacted their primary accountant this morning with notice of intent to divest. Per shareholder agreement, they get first right of refusal, but at fair market value. Independent valuation puts your 37% at approximately $11.8 million. How long until they know who owns the shares?" "They know now. Spoke with Richard Thompson an hour ago. He asked me to have you call him." "And you said?" "That you were unavailable and all communications should go through my office." "Perfect." I smiled for the first time since yesterday. "Proceed with divestment." That evening, Dad showed up at my apartment. I watched through the peephole as he knocked, waited, knocked again. His face looked gray under the hallway lights. After 5 minutes, he shuffled back to the elevator like a man who'd aged 10 years in one day. The messages started flooding in. Mom, Marcus, Amanda, even Jennifer, all variations of the same desperate theme. We need to talk. This is a misunderstanding. Family doesn't do this to family. Family doesn't do this to family. I thought about Tyler's grin, Jennifer's laugh, Dad looking away. About 30 years of being treated like the family consolation prize while secretly bankrolling their success. On day 3, Robert called with an update. Thompson and Associates can't afford to buy you out. Their bank won't extend credit for a shareholder buyout of this magnitude. Marcus called me this morning, somewhat agitated. He suggested you might accept a lower valuation for family harmony. What did you tell him? That shareholder agreements don't include family harmony clauses. Despite everything, I had to smile. What are their options? Find outside investment to buy you out, which takes time and likely means bringing in partners. Secure a business loan using company assets as collateral, which their bank has already declined. Or sell to another buyer, which means outside investors who'll want board representation. How long? Given their financial position, 60 to 90 days. And Diana, you still own 37%. They can't make major business decisions without your approval. Make sure they understand that. On day 5, Mom appeared at my office. The receptionist looked uncertain when she called back. There's a Patricia Thompson here. Says she's your mother? Tell her I'm in meetings all day. I watched from the conference room as Mom stood in our lobby, clutching her purse with both hands, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. After 20 minutes, she left. The tone shifted. Anger crept into their messages. How could I destroy the family business? After everything they'd done for me, did I know what this would do to their employees? Everything they'd done for me. Like teaching their children that charity cases eat last. On day 8, Marcus waited in my apartment parking lot for 3 hours. I watched from my window as he paced, made frantic phone calls, sat in his BMW with his head in his hands. When he finally left, his shoulders shook like he was crying. That same evening, Robert forwarded me an email chain. First National Bank, Thompson and Associates' primary lender, had requested an emergency meeting. The loan officer wanted clarification on the ownership changes and how they might impact existing credit lines. Standard procedure during ownership flux, Robert explained when I called, but it's putting pressure on them. Bank won't approve new lending until ownership stabilizes. How does that affect them? Major equipment lease renewal next month. Without bank approval, they pay cash or lose their server infrastructure. Everything they do runs on leased servers. I absorbed this silently. Also received a call from their corporate attorney. She wanted to explore resolution options that didn't involve outside investors. Seemed quite concerned about the firm's future. On day 10, their largest client sent a letter Robert forwarded to me. Greystone Industries, providing 32% of Thompson and Associates' annual revenue, wanted assurance that ownership changes wouldn't affect service quality. They were exploring their options. Marcus must have been in full panic mode. Day 12 brought news of a potential buyer. Private equity firm called Westmore Partners, Robert explained. They're offering $10.6 million, slightly below valuation, but reasonable. They want 2 board seats. What does that mean for Dad and Marcus? They'll answer to outside investors for the first time. Major decisions require board approval. Westmore will want quarterly reviews, efficiency audits, probably restructuring. Did Dad respond? Richard asked if you'd reconsider, said he was sorry about what happened at the barbecue. Sorry about what happened at the barbecue, like it was one isolated incident instead of a lifetime pattern of casual cruelty. On day 15, Amanda cornered me at the coffee shop near my office. I didn't see her until she was sitting across from my table. You're destroying Dad's legacy, she said without preamble. Her eyes were red-rimmed and hollow. Over a stupid comment from a 12-year-old. This isn't about Tyler. Then what? Money? We can work out a payment plan. Find a way to buy you out without selling to vultures. It's not about money either. Then what, Diana? What do you want? I looked at her directly. I want you to think about every family gathering for the past 10 years, every dinner, holiday, barbecue. Count how many times someone made a comment about my job, my apartment, my life choices. Remember how many times you laughed or said nothing or told me not to be so sensitive. We were just joking around. You were joking. I was being erased. Amanda's face crumpled. This will destroy him. The business is Dad's whole life. He should have thought about that before teaching his grandson that some family members are worth less than others. She left without another word. The Westmore deal closed on day 26. I received a wire transfer for $10.6 million. Robert sent the final paperwork with a brief note. Clean separation achieved. Thompson and Associates now has 2 Westmore board members. They're implementing immediate operational review. The first board meeting happened 3 days later. Robert had contacts at Westmore and heard the details. 5 years of financials, complete employee performance reviews, justification for every executive salary, detailed client retention analysis. Dad presented the company's history, the relationships he'd built, their reputation in the market. Catherine listened politely, then asked why profit margins had declined 3% over 2 years despite revenue growth. Marcus tried explaining their expansion strategy. James asked why they'd expanded into lower profit territories when their core market still had growth potential. Amanda's HR department got grilled extensively. Employee count, turnover rates, why they needed 3 full-time HR staff for 40 employees. Amanda stammered through every answer. The meeting lasted 4 hours. Catherine outlined Westmore's expectations at the end. Detailed quarterly reports, efficiency improvements, possible restructuring. The phrase possible restructuring hung in the air like a death sentence. I heard through family cousins still speaking to me that Marcus actually cried in the parking lot afterward. Jennifer had to drive him home. Dad had been silent for days, just sitting in his home office staring at papers he could no longer control. The business would survive. Westmore specialized in turning around mid-sized firms. They'd make it more efficient, probably more profitable, but it wouldn't be the Thompson family business anymore. Just a company that happened to employ some Thompsons. Dad now reported quarterly performance goals to people who didn't care about his 30-year legacy. Only return on investment mattered. I didn't feel triumphant, just quiet. 3 months after that barbecue, I received an actual letter in my mailbox. Dad's handwriting on the envelope. Inside, 1 page. Diana, I understand now what we did, what I did. I taught my children and grandchildren that success looks one way, and anyone who didn't fit wasn't worth the same respect. I taught them some people eat first and some eat last. I'm sorry it took losing everything to see how wrong I was. This apology doesn't fix anything. I'm not asking forgiveness. I just wanted you to know I finally understand. The business will survive. We'll adapt to our new reality. But I've lost something more important than Thompson and Associates. I've lost my daughter. That's my fault, not yours. I hope someday you find peace with whatever you decide about us. Dad. I put the letter in my desk drawer and didn't respond. Mom stopped calling after the 3rd month. According to Cousin Sarah, she'd finally accepted that some bridges, once burned, stay burned. 6 months later, Tyler sent me a direct message on Instagram. 3 words. I am sorry. I stared at it for a long time. He was 13 now, maybe old enough to understand consequences. Maybe not, I typed back. Thank you for saying that. That brief exchange with Tyler was the only family communication I acknowledged. Mom's calls went unanswered. Dad's subsequent letters joined the first in my drawer, unread. Marcus and Amanda became strangers who happened to share my DNA. The family barbecues continued without me, and I preferred it that way. It wasn't forgiveness, it wasn't reconciliation. It was acknowledgement that words have power, cruelty has consequences, and charity cases sometimes hold all the cards. I never went back to another family barbecue, but sometimes, late at night, I thought about what Robert had said about family harmony clauses. Shareholder agreements are built on clear terms and fair valuations, not blood relations and assumed loyalty. Maybe that was the real lesson. The charity had been mine all along, pretending their version of family was worth the price of my dignity. I'd stopped paying that debt, and I'd never been wealthier.